Why isn't Russia absolutely clobbering Ukraine? The situation is too dynamic to know for sure for now. But as educated guesswork, the Russian military has, in past wars, been almost famously bad at invading other countries. Russia has a military draft, so a lot of their soldiers straight do not want to be there. It's not a shock that many of them fuck off and run if there's any sign of danger. It's very likely, we'll learn later, that a good majority of the Russian soldiers in Ukraine didn't want to be there in the first place. They're just staying alive long enough to get home. Ukrainians, on the other hand, are fighting with all their passion to defend their homeland. That might not be the explanation, and time will tell. But that seems the most likely one to me. They have massive logistic problems and they don't want to level Ukraine because they wanted to run it with a puppet gov. There's a lot of reasons behind this. But I'd like to address the bombers' point. They do not have hundreds of bombers. And sending the bombers they do have to bomb cities like Kharkiv and Kyiv would be suicide. As Ukrainian air defenses and fighters are still active, and these are large, easy detectable and slow aircraft. Furthermore, bombing a civilian population has historically never led to surrender and typically stiffens resistance. On top of this, Ukrainian industry could be targeted, but most of their new weapons are now coming from Europe and the US. So nothing would be achieved even if flattening Ukraine with bombers was possible. All kinds of reasons. Badly trained troops with poor motivation, bad equipment, lousy preparation, poor leadership. Then there are the physical realities. Russia cannot move majority of its forces to Ukraine. That would leave the rest of Russia undefended, and they have threatened to brutalized a lot of their neighbors. Ukraine, on the other hand, of course, has all of its troops in Ukraine. Russia's weird mafia state dismantled their military power. The two main components competing for power are state bureaucrats and the oligarchs who run the mafia. Both of these entities feel threatened by competent military. So they systematically removed any leader of significance and degraded the abilities of their troops to the point of irrelevance. The only significant impact their military has had in Ukraine is the artillery units. Anytime they have to actually maneuver or do anything strategic, they fail spectacularly. They didn't prepare to clobber Ukraine. They prepared to invade and be welcomed with flowers thrown at their feet. Setting up the installation of a puppet government within mere days or weeks at most, it was an incredible self-delusion and intelligence failure on the part of Russian leadership. Years of corruption. When you have a huge military budget that goes to buying you and your mates super yachts rather than what it is intended for, you get what you pay for. In addition to other answers, Ukraine's military is 100% built to defend Ukraine. That is what it is designed to do. Russia's military is not 100% built to invade Ukraine, and is not fully committed to invading Ukraine. You can't compare Ukraine military size versus Russia military size. You need to compare Ukraine military size versus those Russian military assets useful and able to invade Ukraine. I would like to add that Ukraine is receiving significant foreign aid in the form of military equipment, intel, and even volunteers from several countries. Russia maybe has China, but even then I doubt China supports this war. Russia is an authoritarian country with a top-down culture resembling Asian states than Western democracies. Some things that are obvious in a Western society aren't at all obvious or natural in Russia. 1. Such example is the assumption that everyone is doing their job. Let's start with intelligence. The main department that was supplying Ukrainian info and analysis to Putin was created by him while He was still a part of FSB. They were incentivized to tell him what he wanted to hear to keep them funded. Another example is equipment. Even such a small thing as military trucks' tires have to be maintained. Instead, due to widespread corruption, either the original tires were stolen and sold on the black market, or the cheaper versions were installed at the factory to begin with. In either case, the people responsible for maintaining them didn't bother to move the trucks every few months. The result is convoys getting stuck in the mud. Why don't people care? Part of this culture is inherited from the USSR. If you don't have private property for 70 years, you don't feel ownership. There's another part to it. A lot of soldiers are conscripts. They're out in a couple of years. If their officers don't care, why would they? The Ukrainians are defending their land. Some troops didn't even know they were going to Ukraine and are not sure what they're supposed to do. Those who did know, especially those higher in the ranks, became complacent after the annexation of Crimea in 2014, which was actually pretty successful. So there's complacency. The Ukrainians spent 8 years preparing to fight a much stronger enemy. Russians spent 8 years resting in the laurels. Source: countless articles, Twitter threads. And being a Russian myself, couldn't stand all of that and left the country. There is no way to tell until everything is declassified in a decade or two. There is an interesting rumor that Russian intelligence were funding armed pro-Russian resistance groups in Ukraine. But the agents in charge were pocketing the money and submitting fictional reports. So the Russian campaign was designed around linking up with pro-Russian partisans that didn't exist. What is known is that 150 agents of the FSB, Russian intelligence, have lost their jobs and some have been imprisoned. Dictatorship doesn't breed competence. Because if they overextend their military to crush a small country, they won't be equipped to defend a counter-attack by NATO. While we won't know exact reasons until years this war is over, we can still make some good guesses. Right now: 1. People heavily overestimated Russia. 2. Widespread corruption have substantially eaten away at Russia's military might. 3. The nepotism and corruption in the government and military means not many competent people are in charge. 4. Bad logistics. 5. While Russia is way bigger and got way more people to toss into the grinder, they haven't and can't toss everything they can onto Ukraine, because if they do, places like Georgia and Chechnya are going to take the opportunity themselves of Russian influence. Russia wants Ukraine intact, since it's a major economic power in the region, with a lot of agriculture. Bombing it to oblivion destroys its value. That being said, as they get frustrated at their losses, scorched earth tactics seem more likely. One reason: the Russians are using conscripts, lots of them, to fight for a cause they don't believe in. The Ukrainians have a shitload of volunteers who are all fighting for their homes. One side is much more motivated than the other. Ukraine has lots of support from other strong countries. Russia does not. Plus, Russia doesn't want to destroy Ukraine. They want to govern it. So their end goal isn't just to kill everyone they can. No matter how powerful you are, it's really hard to fight in the streets of towns filled with snipers and hiding troops. Russia's only choice is to bombard it to hell if they want to do it quick. Also, don't be fooled by the Ukraine is kicking Russia ass. Most of that is propaganda. While Russia isn't exactly winning either. The only thing that is saving Ukraine right now is the sheer amount of support and weapons they're getting from the rest of the world. Don't downvote me to hell, BTW. Am not in favor of Russia. Am anti-war. Just stating facts. For one thing, they don't know what radiation poisoning is. Massive corruption. A static top-down command structure that doesn't encourage independent action from field officers and NCOs. And a system of recruitment and training that hinges on hazing, brutality and occasional murder, rape. Throw that together and you have a demoralized, poorly trained military with shit equipment and a complete lack of leadership.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Eracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.